Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder. My name is Diana Maiden, and I am very pleased to be your worship leader today. Each week, we gather in community to refocus on the things which are most important in our lives, remembering who we are and what we are for. It is a serious task done joyfully, playfully, intentionally. And it is a time for spiritual practice for our essential work as human beings, a time to return to the wells from which we draw meaning and sustenance. Welcome also to those of us who are joining online. We are delighted that you are here and part of this congregation, all of us together in person and online. If you're a new visitor, you'll find a link to our visitor form in the video description. We'd love to connect with you. We have several announcements to share this morning. Many of us are eager to take steps to mitigate climate change and be part of a new clean energy future. If you would like information and resources to help you, the UUCB's Climate Action Ministry invites you to the Empower Electric Energy and EV Fair here at UUCB next Saturday. Owners, dealers, and services of electric cars and bicycles will be exhibiting in the UUCB parking lot. You can ask questions, test drive, and get information on range and charging. Also, a variety of clean energy resource organizations will offer information at booths in the Sky Room with options and incentives for home, apartment, transportation, and more. Please join us and bring your friends on Saturday, May 6th from 2 to 5. If you want more information or to volunteer to help with the fair, see the climate action table in the Sky Room today after the service. My second announcement is a communication update. The communications team is working to overhaul our entire website from top to bottom, including our logo and color scheme, to create a more contemporary feel. Over the next few weeks, you may have seen new member Weekday Sanchez, welcome Weekday, doing some video. Yes. Weekday is doing some recording during our services and other church events as part of this communication project. The team hopes to have more news to share at the annual meeting. Next Sunday is the final week for our music director, Deborah Borelli. And we will send her off in style with lots of music and well wishes and celebration. Please write a note of appreciation and well wishes in a hymnal, which I don't see, but it will be passed around during the service and also in the Sky Room during coffee, so that she can have, our written memories as well. And finally, now, our Director of Religious Education, Rachel Alba, has a special announcement.
I am so excited to share with you. As Diana said, my name is Rachel Alba. I'm the Director of Religious Education. And I'm so excited to share with you that we have made a hire for our nursery care. So please. This is Emily Sims and the adorable Tay. Emily comes to us with years of experience as an elementary school teacher, and she's taken some classes in early childhood education at Foothills. And she also comes to us with, like I mentioned, the adorable Tay. So she will be helping out in the nursery both during the 9 o'clock and the 11, and occasionally here and there to help us out when there are special events, like the kids' annual meeting, which will be happening at the same time as everyone else's annual meeting, but we'll be having more fun. So if you would like to skip, I'm just going to make a plug while I'm in front of you. If you want to skip out on the annual meeting and want to go hang out with the kids, we need people to help run games and do fun things. Also, so if you are somebody who likes to attend and is a community member, but is not an official member and wants to hang out at the kids' annual meeting with a hula hoop competition and cornhole and, maybe some water balloon games if it's warm enough, please feel free to email me and we have opportunities for that. But more importantly, Emily Sims right here. And thank you. And we're going to go hang out in the nursery.
More fun than the annual meeting. We'll have bylaws revisions, for goodness sake. How come? Mary, I saw you hop up with the announcement about the hymnal, and I wonder if it's not yet in the room, do you mind grabbing it and a pen and starting it going around for Deborah? Appreciate that. Oh, it's good to be here this morning. It's good to be with you all. We come to church to remember, to listen and remember the truths of living and dying that we already know hidden among every ordinary part of life. We come to church bringing pain and sorrow and joy, and we place those on the altar of our lives. They say, these things are what we are made of. These things are what's real. We come to church because this is a place of grace, of losing and finding the way on the winding road, meeting and parting and stumbling and starting over, always called toward our best selves. We come here like rivers to the sea to pool our hopes and our dreams, to consider the deeper currents that move through our lives. We come here to be silly, too, and to be weary, to be despairing and to be hopeful. This house is a home for the ingathering of all of what it is to be alive. For all the parts of you, come in. Come in, bringing every bit of who you are, and leave none of yourself behind. For here you can be who you are and who you're called to become. That's the life that we're building together. We rise in body or in spirit. Let's sing that out.
Feed our every need. We can feed our every need. our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, this world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry. We are building a new way. Together, we are building a new way. Together, we are building a new way. Feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. Building a new way. Building a new way. Building a new way. Let me hear you say it. Building a new way. Building a new way. Building a new way.
The way that we're building is not just a physical space. It's a way of being in the world. It's a way of being connected with each other, a way of being connected, grounded in ourselves, too. Part of that is the commitment that we make to each other, being in community. We're united, after all, not by a list of things that every one of us believes in exactly the same way. We're united by shared values. We're united by a shared commitment of how to be in relationship with each other. And that commitment is expressed in our behavioral covenant, in our relational covenant, which just means the promise we make about how we are together. This is the perfect time to speak about that, because the best time to talk about conflict is when you're not in it. And we aren't. Here's what it says. Our spiritual health and growth requires our best efforts to maintain respectful relationships with each other, especially when we encounter conflicts among our members or with our minister, with staff. And so as members of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder, we covenant, we promise, we commit to do the following to the best of our ability. To treat others in our community with the same love and respect we'd like to receive. To listen to others with attention and empathy, recognizing that it is as important to understand as it is to be understood. We speak honestly and directly with care and compassion. We honor the right of others to form and hold differing opinions. We speak directly to anyone we have a concern with. We focus on the present and the future rather than on the past. And we keep an open mind. We remain engaged in the process of seeking resolution when conflict occurs. Just about every classroom that kids or grandkids go into these days starts off their time together, starts off their years with a very similar practice. They begin, like we do, by figuring out not just what are the things we're doing, but how altogether do we want to do them. In that spirit, we gather this morning, committed not just to a list of things to do as a congregation, not just to a strategic plan, not just to goals and objectives, but committed to a way of being in the world with each other.
If you are joining us online and have a candle or a chalice nearby, please get it ready. Please get ready to light it. I'd like to now invite Nicole Ball to light this morning's chalice.
Thank you. So my name is Nicole Ball, and I've been attending UUCB since about 2015. And I've been thinking a lot this month about the power of showing up. So I want to tell you about a time when I showed up. In 2020, I served on the search committee that led to Reverend David becoming our settled minister. I joined the committee determined to do my best for the committee and for UUCB, but I didn't anticipate the benefits that showing up for you would have for me. And there were many. There are many worse ways to spend a pandemic than meeting virtually. With a group of loving and hardworking people to discuss our values and our hopes for the future of this community. It was a hopeful and uplifting activity in a time of uncertainty. The search committee's weekly chalice lightings gave me a sense of peace in these anxious times. The ritual was just very comforting. Just as important, in church we make space for conversations around faith and deep emotions and politics that are often not appropriate at work and sometimes just don't even happen among friends and family. You may remember that the George Floyd protests happened that summer, and I was honored to listen to members of our community, people of color, express their feelings about their experiences, the racism in our country, and the protests. If I hadn't been part of the search committee, I don't know where I would have had these conversations. And they really made clear to me how hurtful racism is in a way that I had certainly considered with my head, but had not really experienced in my heart. And so I'm very grateful for that experience. So I'd like to light this chalice for the power of showing up and the unexpected ways that it can change you.
We now invite all of those gathered in your various locations to join together in fellowship and community as we say aloud together our congregation's covenant. Please stand. We gather in fellowship to speak truth to each other, to reach out and touch one another, to care with each other, and to seek truth divine. So be it.
Join me in a spirit of prayer and meditation, a spirit of listening within yourself too, listening for all those things that you're carrying on your heart, all those things which maybe you have spent this week carefully avoiding, the griefs and worries, the hopes and joys. In this moment in the service, we practice finding all of those things again. We practice trusting that we won't be overwhelmed, that we're not alone, that we gather in community, all of us and each of us, weighed down and lifted up, both at once. This morning, I feel spring seems suddenly to have arrived. All of a sudden, there's flowers and dandelions and leaves that seem to have sprung out of nowhere. And what I know is that spring is a long season that happens bit by bit. And what I know is that winter is a long season too, where things are happening slowly and underground. Just like the seasons in the world around us, each of us have seasons of our own hearts or spirits. And in the silence of this room, I invite you to think on, to consider, to listen for, maybe even to see the season that you're in right now, the season of your heart right now. Maybe you are in spring and there are new beginnings, things that seem to be happening suddenly, which have been slowly growing for months. Maybe it is a winter season for you right now. Your own private winter where it feels like nothing is moving and nothing is going anywhere, and it takes a lot of trust to believe that there's something on the far side of it. Maybe for you it's summer and things are flourishing and bright and sometimes too hot and overwhelming too in the midst of it all. Maybe for you it's a season of endings, of a part of your life, of work, of relationship. Maybe it's an ending which you've hoped for and waited for, and nonetheless grieve. In the silence of this room, I invite you to listen for what season you're in right now, and rest in it as we spend a few moments in silence. Amen. When we say that our mission is in part to always love, it means that we actively seek connection and compassion across boundaries and borders. And so each week in the service, you're invited to come forward, to take a stone in symbol of your joys, your sorrows, and place it in the earth. It's a private act, it's a personal act. On the one hand, you place a stone as a token of your own individual grief or joy. And it is a public act, a community act. What we make is a whole, it's a miniature landscape of our individual inner lives, unique and united. In just a moment, I'll invite you, as the music begins, to come forward to place a stone. The first one that I'll place is for Alan Davis. He's having kidney surgery on Tuesday to remove a growth. He'd like your energy, your well wishes, your love. For all of our hopes and all of our griefs, we hold this compassionate space with love. And I invite you to come forward as you feel moved.
everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything there is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away souls, a time to gather stones together. Everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace, a time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time for love, a time for hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late.
On June 16th, 1963, we broke ground to construct this building. And in the 60 years between then and now, it served us well. That's something like 3,000 or more Sundays of church. And it's hundreds of events and dinners and auctions and gatherings and weddings and memorials. 4 years of our guests living in sanctuary. There was a new expansion in the 80s, a new parking lot in the 90s, a new playground in the 2000s, I may be slightly off on my years, a new kitchen in the 2010s, and buildings get old. And it costs more and more to do nothing with a building. Let me give you two examples, though, of buildings getting old. So the heat in this room is forced hot air. Great, straightforward. But the way that it moves around the room is through ductwork in the floor. And the way that the ductwork in the floor was built was that when the concrete was poured, they put in, those great big tubes, like those heavy-duty cardboard tubes? Well, they put those in and they poured the concrete around it, and it works perfectly fine as long as it never gets wet. But if, for example, there's a flood, like there was 10 years ago, I remember seeing the photo of Fox standing up to his knees in the front of the room here in the flood. Well, it tends to mess with your cardboard. And we think there are spots around this room where some of that cardboard is flapping down, is preventing some of the airflow. This whole topic is, I see Tom Zanoni getting less and less excited because he knows it. He's been digging through. Let me give you another example. There are very, very few right angles in this building, right? But there is one right angle for sure in this building, and the right angle is the plumbing junction where the outflow from two restrooms come together. It goes like this. This is not what I thought I would be preaching about. All right, so here's how the plumbing goes. It comes down, it comes together, and there's a T-junction, just like that. Well, if any of you are plumbers, we need your help. if any of you, and I'm not, the way you build plumbing junctions today is a Y junction. Because if you think about your car merging onto the highway, you don't merge onto the highway at a T junction, you merge on in a Y junction, right? All of this I learned from the Roto-Rooter guy last month. Buildings get older. Last fall, more than 6 of us gathered for visioning, to imagine what is the future of our faith home. What's the future of the building, of a building that we want? And I so appreciate that the process did not begin, and in fact, at no point in the process was the question, should we move or should we stay? That's not what visioning is. The question was, what do we want? What do we want and dream and hope for out of a facility, out of a building? And what emerged, of course, doesn't obviously require us to move or stay. What emerged is that people cared deeply about the physical space that we gather in. There is a hunger for a beautiful, a sacred, a functional space to deepen spiritually and to connect bravely. A space, for example, that if you're in the back of the room and a tall person is standing in front of you, you can still see what's going on. A space with flexibility for worship and beauty in our grounds, with integration of the natural world. At the other end of the building, the kids flow right out from their classrooms onto this wonderful patio space and then out onto the playground. And I'm envious of that, not maybe a little bit because of the playground, but mostly because of that flow from the inside to the outside. People said, staying as is probably won't meet our needs and our hopes for the facility, for the building over time. But the conversation around this new way of building is not just, it does not end with the sort of anxiety-raising acknowledgement that this space doesn't meet our hopes. Because at the same time this year, the Strategic Initiative Committee has been gathering data about what our options are. And they've looked at 3 scenarios for what it would be to stay in the building and 3 scenarios for what it would be to go. And they have been diligently, and they still are, collecting data, analyzing this. The first option of staying is to do nothing, right? We stay, we've gotten along fine in this building for a long time, we can. But the thing is, doing nothing turns out to be an extremely expensive option. The heating, the T-junction, this is the tip of the iceberg of systems in the building. Someone told me that on Easter Sunday a few years ago, there was sewage bubbling up in the front yard. Buildings get old and have issues. Doing nothing is not free. The second option would be to remodel within these existing walls, and a third option, potentially to do some remodeling and to expand on site. So they're talking with real estate folks, talking with architects to say, all right, give us a rough sense of what the cost would be to remodel or to expand. And then they've also looked at 3 options around leaving this site. The first is to buy a church that meets our needs better. And the trouble is, there are not a lot of churches for sale in Boulder County on a regular basis. A second option would be to buy an existing building and remodel it. There's a school somewhere nearby that's essentially just bought a warehouse. They're going to retrofit this thing and make it work for their needs. We could do something like that. And a third option would be to buy land with nothing on it and build. And they've talked with all sorts of real estate folks, people who are involved, to understand what are those costs? What's the property we're on worth? It's worth somewhere over $3 million, probably, which is a lot of money unless you are trying to buy property in Boulder County. In which case, your house from the 1970s is worth several million dollars now. You know, that's part of the reality. That was part of their work, is to understand what are those costs, what's possible. It is the steady, sober, diligent project work of moving ahead, the partner to the visioning. And in the early fall, September, October, that team's going to report back to you all on those 6 options. And there'll be a whole lot of presentation and conversation and deliberation, but ultimately what comes from that is the board will ask you, the whole congregation, to decide on which of these to pursue. Which of those options do we want to take to the next step and flesh out and say, all right, concretely, what would that mean for us? One of the things I appreciate most working with the Strategic Initiatives Committee this year, and for that matter, I think a thing the whole congregation that you all know already, but one of the things I hear in those conversations too, is that the point of the congregation is not to make a building possible. The point of a building is to make the congregation possible. A former intern of mine told the story of being in Tanzania. I think she was in the Peace Corps, in a village, a very heavily Catholic village, whose church had been damaged multiple times, and they knew it was going to take them years to rebuild. And so they gathered for Mass each week under an acacia tree. Deep-rooted like the tree, resilient like the tree, and living in the present moment. That community was not waiting for a building before they could start being a community. They were doing it right there. Some congregations, I'm actually not worried about this for us, some congregations get this twisted around, as if the point and the purpose of the community is to maintain the building. This is like the historical society model of doing church. We're not doing that, though, and we know it. I went to a 4th of July parade last year in another state, and 4th of July parade, fire trucks and classic cars and high school marching bands, horse rider associations. And I flipped through the 8-page insert that the local newspaper had given describing the 130-some organizations that were going by. And the one I remember, actually besides the Humane Society, which had a truck with cats and dogs driving through the parade. All right, that made a great impression. But the description that I remember, the description that sticks with me is this: First Presbyterian Church, the neoclassical church with stained glass windows. Then that was it. That was the totality of the description. What I think they were trying to do was to be recognizable. You know, among all the churches that are out there, here's what we look like. Fair enough. But the neoclassical church with the stained glass windows, that was it. No further information. It sounded like the church was the building. And then even to recognize it, you need a basic architectural education. What is I Googled this. It turned neoclassical is like the Greek-looking stuff with the sort of triangle pillars holding up the front. Who's the church for? People who like buildings. Our mission is not to serve the building is here to serve the mission for us. And that's a big part of what I heard in the visioning sessions last fall. You all took that so basically for granted. It was beautiful. In the same way that we just take for granted that whatever we're going to do green. We're going to do in a way that's not adding more carbon to the world. A building that's big enough to fit us all. A building that is, in fact, ADA compliant. These ramps are not. These corners are not big enough to take a turn in a walker or a wheelchair. The front down here, I'm sure you've felt this, is not even. You know, you're walking along the front sort of at an angle. Stairs, which are designed like regular stairs. The point of all of that is that the question underneath is, who is this place for? And it's not that these are bad things automatically, but they send a message. Who is the place for? Well, the stones ritual is apparently only for folks who can navigate their way down to the front and back up again. The building is only for those folks. Who's the chancel for? People who can get up and down the stairs, or everybody? Those are the sort of choices. A sense of beauty in all of our spaces and a connection to the natural world. It's not just logistics in the building. It's how do we feel when we gather here? And the point of all of those things is to serve the mission. In 1874, the Second Unitarian Church in Chicago burns down in one of the various Chicago fires. And the building is smoking rubble. And the next day, the whole congregation gathers there. And there's an artist who sketches this, turns it into an engraving, and puts it on the cover, I think, of Collier's, which goes out around the country, this wonderful line art engraving of the preacher on some big block of stone doing this kind of a thing, very preacherish, right? And the whole community there, the building was rubble. The congregation was entirely unharmed. When we're building a new way, we're focusing on the community as much as on the building. We're focusing on how are we together. That's the real substance of this place, rooted and resilient. And that's one of the reasons that this year we've been working to create a healthy congregation team. This is very exciting because now I get to talk about bylaws. I've been waiting for this the whole service. So for many years, we've had a committee on shared ministry whose functions, specified by the bylaws, the 9 o'clock service got a hooray for bylaws at that point. So, all right. Is to evaluate the minister and the ministries of the church, which is a very important thing to do. But the fact is that for years and years, the board has been doing those functions, which also makes sense because the board has the authority to act on them rather than just to make recommendations. Over the years, the Committee on Shared Ministry has also performed a crucial function not specified by the bylaws. Okay. You're waiting to find out what it is, that's fair. Namely, taking ownership, taking responsibility for our congregational covenant of respectful relations, our relational covenant, the promises and commitments we make that you heard earlier in the service about how it is we're going to be together. To formalize and expand that work, the current Committee on Shared Ministry, the current team, has developed a new charter to transform into a healthy congregation team. And you'll read more about this in the coming week, because to make the change, we have to actually amend the bylaws at our annual meeting. Oh, okay. All right, you came around on that one. The Healthy Congregation team is the group responsible for helping us live out our mission by weaving that covenant of respectful relationships into the life of the congregation. Educating us all about what it is, educating us also about conflict, because conflict is a normal and natural and ordinary thing, and the best time to work on that is when we are not in the middle of it. That Healthy Congregation team also will serve as a holder of space, not arbitrator or judge, but a holder of space for people in conflict to repair relationships with each other, with conversation grounded in that behavioral covenant and the commitments that we make. And that team will lead all of us in updating the behavioral agreements as our needs and understandings change over time. The poet Philip Booth starts one of his poems saying, "How we get there is where we arrive." How you get there is where you arrive. How we get there as a congregation into our future, how we get there is not just what we do. The real work of the church is not just the strategic plan or the goals and objectives for the coming year. The real work is also the care and connection of the community. It's our rootedness and resilience. I had lunch a few weeks ago with Ben, with our former collaborative keyboardist, and I asked him, what makes the Chancel Cats work? What makes the band work? They don't know I'm about to say this. I asked him, what's working well to keep on supporting? And among the things that he said was this. He said, anyone gets to say, let's try this. And anyone gets to say, well, I don't think that worked. There's a spirit, he said, of collaboration and experimentation which makes room for imperfection, which makes room to try things, and then which makes room, if they don't work, not to be filled with crushing guilt. The conversation doesn't go, hey, let's try this thing, it didn't work, I will never make a suggestion again. Right? The conversation goes, oh yeah, that didn't sound good, let's not do that. And you move on. That's the practice, that's part of what it is to live into a healthy congregation. It's like that old line, someone told me this about marriage or any relationship, I think, you can be right. You can be the one who is right, or you can be in a relationship. Right? Not both of those. Can't do it all the time. Part of our work of being resilient, of undoing conflict, of setting down grudges or resentments, of speaking directly with each other when things are hard, part of that work is a spiritual, a psychological task of letting go of perfectionism. When everything has to be just perfect, you can't take feedback. You can't do things differently. Defensiveness locks you in place. And just like we pay attention to that charge as individuals so that we can live out our values, so we can say, hey, I screwed up, and make room for grace and move on and do differently, just like we do that as individuals. We pay attention to that sort of stuff as a congregation as a whole to live out our mission. Figuring out a new way for our building is complicated, and it takes time and energy and resources, and it is disruptive and exciting, and we need to do it, and we'll figure it out. But our deeper commitment, shared by every one of us, is to build a new way of doing community and life together. Our real commitment is not to a new building. It's to community. It's to make a beautiful space that fits all of us and heals our spirits and inspires us so strongly that our description in the 4th of July parade says nothing about the building, but simply instead, we are a liberal congregation who connects bravely, deepens spiritually, embodies justice, and always loves. That's our commitment. Come stop by. Amen. We rise in body or spirit. Let's close in song.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits to faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings the song of brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
This month, our offering goes to Agrivoltaic Learning Center located at Jack's Solar Garden right here in Boulder County on Highway 95 in southwest Longmont. Spring is alive and it's a busy place. In today's short video, we'll see the living fence planted around the perimeter of the Learning Center. Byron Komenik, owner of Jack's Solar Garden and founder of the Learning Center, and others will explain how the strip of land provides important habitat for birds and insects that feed on and pollinate the plants growing under the solar panels.
Today we're planting our largest Habitat Hero demonstration garden to date with over 3,000 native plants. And by planting bird-friendly plants, you provide birds with food and shelter and places to breed. And that's the idea behind Habitat Hero, a core program of Audubon Rockies.
Jack's Solar Garden is a 1.2 megawatt solar array where we're going to elevate the panels up, space them out so that we can actually grow crops underneath and around the solar panels. And then around the perimeter of it, Audubon Rockies has over 3,000 plants that have gone in around the perimeter of our solar array.
So not only are we creating a place that's ideal habitat for birds, we're able to connect the community to nature as we offer volunteer opportunities, and also the farm is open weekly for farm tours. We're also looking at being a model for other green industry leaders. As we look into the future in creating renewable energies, we want to do it in a responsible way, and really looking at how we impact the land, how we impact our bird populations, and how can we do this responsibly? How can we coexist with nature and the green industry? And we're going to use science to back this up. We will have bird and monitoring surveys in place. We'll work with our volunteers and local Audubon chapters to conduct these surveys, especially during the spring and fall migrations, to look at the health of our bird populations out there and hopefully note an increase in bird diversity abundance over the years.
So I'm really excited about the plant palette that we're choosing to use here at Jack Solar Garden, because it includes lots of things that not only provide habitat for birds and butterflies and bees, but also provide food for people. When this project's all done, I'm really excited to see a community solar energy project of larger than 1 megawatt producing energy for our local community. And instead of locking that solar array in a chain link fence, we've created this living fence that goes around it that provides habitat and food.
And also we want to work with school kids. We want to work with the community. We want to have educational tours where people can come out, walk on our farm, see what's growing underneath the panels, so that they can understand how we can produce both solar energy and food all in the same location.
Though the living fence was done in large part before the solar panels went up, the collaborative work of many has created an independent web: living fence, food crops, solar panels, young farmers, researchers, and volunteers. Take a tour of the Agrivoltaic Learning Center at Jack Solar Garden yourself to see how this collaborative effort is providing a pathway to better use our land while helping to solve the impacts of climate change. I invite you to give as generously as you are able. For those online, you can use the QR code or find a link in the video description. For those gathered in person, you can scan the QR code or make a donation as the ushers now pass the baskets. May our gifts be used to enact justice, bringing peace and love to the Boulder community.
We receive this offering with gratitude. Let me close with 2 invitations. First, next Sunday is Deborah's last Sunday with us, and we are going to send you off in style and lots of music. I hope that you'll come and join in and be a part of that. It's also the Sunday with our last new member class until the fall. Those new member classes are from 12:30 to 2:30, and our membership coordinator, and Irene and I will lead that together. Come by, learn about what it means to be a member, where we've come from, what's ahead. Lunch is provided. But then a second invitation. Sunday, June 21st will be a big day, and not just because of the aforementioned bylaws changes. There's no 9 a.m. service that day. Instead, from 10 to 11, the staff team's going to cook a pancake breakfast to say thanks to y'all for such a great year. At the 11 o'clock will be our intergenerational flower service. Bring a flower with you. It's the 100th anniversary this year of that annual custom. Then at 12:30 in here we'll have our annual meeting, and in the RE wing, our first ever kids annual meeting. If you are passionate about other people attending the annual meeting, I hope you'll volunteer to be with the kids instead. Sunday, June 21st, May 21st. Oh my God, May. I'm not going to be here Sunday, June 21st. But May 21st, we're going to do church like Baptist that day. Spend the whole day here, feed you, sing. And close with this invitation. Our work always is to be the people that we are and to become the people that we're called into being. We choose to do that work in community, knowing that even as we follow our own individual paths, those are enriched in conversation and connection with others. We make something out of our life together that we don't make individually. And the invitation in this house is into community that is rooted and resilient. Our service ends. Go in peace, and amen. Will you rise and close in song?